All right. Thank you everyone for attending our March series of our customer webinar. Today, we're going to be doing a tour of the AkitaBox solutions with our lovely friend, Josh Lowe, who is joining us from our sales team, and he's one of the co-founders of AkitaBox. So he knows all the things about all the things of our software and the industry. And he's going to be showing us all of the wonderful capabilities that you guys may not know about or may not be using quite as much as you thought it was capable of doing. If you have any questions as we go through the demo, please put them into the Q&A. Jessica, part of our support team here, is going to be moderating those questions. We're going to try to hold them all until the end so that we can get through the demo a little bit more seamlessly, but please feel free to throw them in there so that we don't lose whatever thought that you have. Other panelists that we have on here, just to reiterate, our wonderful customer success team. Your friendly local CSM is part of the panelist group. So you might have seen emails from them, but after our webinar today, please feel free to reach out to any of the lovely ladies on this call today so that they can answer whatever questions that you may have. Josh, anything else that you would like to add before we begin?
No, let's just hop in and we'll get going, and we'll answer questions here at the end. We'll get through as much as we can. There's a lot to show here, so we'll get started.
All right, let's go.
Awesome. All right, before I get ahead of myself, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm logged into AkitaBox. You're all familiar. I'm in my dashboard view. I'm going to go through some of the basics. I know this might be a little bit of a re-education on the front end, but I always like to start there because every tool that we build really builds upon the base foundation that is AkitaBox platform. And so you should all be fairly familiar with the idea that we have maps and information about your building. And then as we scroll down, we get other floor plans associated with the building. We can obviously come up to the top and change what building we're in to get different information regarding our work. We can go ahead and click into the floor plan if we want to start to get the information. And I know that most of you are probably set up with our standard implementation. I know there's other folks on the line here who have taken upon themselves to go much beyond that and have many other different types of assets in their building and track them. I like this demo just to kind of show off some of what we've been asked by other clients and the depth and breadth of what can be tracked in AkitaBox. As you know, this is customizable. You can talk to your CSM if you have questions, obviously. But if there's a different category of asset that may be important to you, we have some customers specifically in healthcare that track things like fire doors and fire dampers that may not be in your building. We've actually had people ask us, hey, can we keep killing our plants? Can we track our potted plants? Sure you can. We actually have folks who do PMs against their potted plants to make sure they're being watered on schedule. So just to show you kind of the breadth of what can be tracked in the system, and that, our best ideas and, the best ROI sometimes comes from our clients' own ideas of, boy, I really have a hard time keeping, track of this or pulling data on this, and then figuring out how to use AkitaBox to maybe bring more value on the platform that you're already paying for. And so being able to show you that, I think is important. Obviously, when I click on one of these assets, right, you're all familiar with the fact that we have the data over here. I always explain this a little bit like it's like a Google Sheet. I say that a little bit cautiously because you can add a whole bunch of stuff here that's not maintainable. And so I always, as we have conversations about what data do I add, and, you may be having those conversations internally with your product right now of, maybe we want to track this against, this type of asset or that against that type of asset. I always tell people, you really have to know that when you put that in, are you going to find enough value in that data point you added to commit people hours to maintaining it over the long haul? And if the answer is yes, we want to maintain that. We have a process to keep that up to date, and it's valuable enough for us to commit hours to maintain it. The answer is absolutely, you should put that in there. If it's a little bit of a, well, it'd be nice to have for this one thing, but I'm not sure we'd really maintain it. It still might be a good enough use case to build that out for that one thing. But it's probably where you start to ask questions of, is it really something I should put in here? Or should we augment the data somewhere else? You can see things in here like description, right? You all may or may not have some of these fields. We have folks who track consumables in here, and then adding all the information. And so, the photos that come in here, the O&M manuals, warranties. I have clients who are tracking warranties and doing warranty management in AkitaBox, specifically when it comes to maybe newer buildings in their portfolio, that they want to make sure that they're checking those things prior to the warranties going up to make sure they're capturing the best ROI on that. And again, QR codes is something that you're probably all familiar with as well. One thing that I like to highlight, though, that's a newer function in AkitaBox, we have customers using it, but I think some of our existing customers may or may not know about this, but the ability to actually add asset relationships. So things that are upstream and downstream from our assets that may be useful in your daily operations. So for instance, this air handler unit knows what electrical panel turns the power on and off. If I need to go do work on it, where do I go? And being able to click on the electrical panel and go there, right? Who do I need to notify that we're going to be shutting off the air conditioning because it's in San Antonio, it's August, it's hot, and I need to let some people know not to send in work orders because we know we're going to have it down for 4 hours, and knowing what rooms those are that this controls so that we can do those notifications in the correct way. And so this is just something that's there. Again, you can utilize this. It's not an extra on top of our platform. It's automatically on. And so this is just something that's there for you to take advantage of, and more of knowing that it's there to see if it's something that you want to start to utilize. From here, this is where, again, I want to take a little bit of time in the platform because I think there's some other things and some ways that you can expand your use just based upon what you're tracking, how you're tracking it, like the asset relationships. Now I'm going to go back into our list view here and into our dashboard. And I want to take a little bit of a look into another feature that's not new, but, rolled out in the last year and a half, which is our inspection programs. And so, I know most of you might have been using this for work order management, preventative maintenance. I know some of you on the phone do in fact use inspections in your daily use of AkitaBox. But I want to spend a little bit of time of digging into inspections and what it is. You're probably familiar with maintenance and schedules, which is a reoccurring task against a single asset. So for instance, my air handler units, I need to change filters, and we have filter changes set for every 3 months on our air handler units. That would be handled as part of a PM program because it's kind of that one-to-one scheduling item and task for the specific preventative maintenance for that one item. Inspections operate in our system in a very similar way to how our preventative maintenance works. However, it's kind of a one-to-many. And so it's here we need to go do, in this case, fire extinguisher checks in my building. And so we can start to look at this and understand, okay, what's happening? I have 9 assets because I have 9 fire extinguishers in my building. It's an inspection. It's part of my fire extinguishers round. I know what trade is performing the work within it. And I know that there's a checklist template associated with this. And so I'm going to go ahead here and click on the template once so that you can see how this gets built out. And so the inspection template is really the list of questions that an individual will go through when they go to any specific fire extinguisher that they're at. You can see here the list of questions and then the answers that they can give and what the reaction is based upon those answers. So, if they answer yes here, it passes. If they answer no, it fails. This is important when it comes to compliance because you may have a series of questions. And in some cases, you may have 3 right answers and 1 wrong answer, or 3 wrong answers and 1 right answer. You can take care of that all here. Again, this is customizable. This one happens to be, a compliance code with NFPA. It can be anywhere from, that for healthcare, very specific kind of environment of care things for Joint Commission. We also have folks who are using it as like their daily inspection of, hey, I go to this site every day and I check these 10 things. It may be exterior lighting, it may be signage, it may be the parking lot, right? But they're going through that list and capturing that on a daily basis, not necessarily for direct compliance, more so from a quality assurance and process that organization goes through to make sure they're keeping a clean and well lit space. I'm going to go back here. And now you can see some of the things that are similar to what happens in a preventative maintenance schedule. We have a frequency. So this specific inspection happens every month. We have a priority set to this, and it gets an ID. Now, when I scroll down, this is where inspections start to bring a little more power than a typical PM or work order, in the fact that we're actually tracking and maintaining this data for reporting and insight later on. And so we can start to see here that we've had this many that are due to be scheduled, and we have this many open work orders. And so if I go ahead, we're going to go and click through one of these, and we're going to continue the round. And so you can right away see that we get this list over here. And so I can select from the list, or I can select from the floor plan. And so I have the ability to say, yep, I'm standing in front of this fire extinguisher. We can go through my list of questions. We can add a photo if we want. We can add additional messages if we want to associate with this. We can add a work order. So, if it fails, right, we can go ahead and associate a work order with this. And so this one, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to fail it because there's an obstruction in the way. If we want, we can add a note. Why it failed. We can go ahead and add a work order, because a lot of times it's not just about tracking the fact that it passed, but sometimes things fail. And when things fail, it's more about making sure that we're taking care of that and have an audit trail to show that we took care of the issue. And so here we can go ahead and we can put in our notes about what we think this work order is going to take. It's going to take a half hour. We can say when we want this done, right? I mean, I want this done today. We can go ahead and give it a type. And so this happens to be a fire protection, which I don't have in this one. The general means. And what trade, it's fire. And if I want to assign it to somebody specifically, because I know they can take care of it, I can do that. And so now that work order is being created against this failed inspection. And so as soon as I hit done, as opposed to the green checkbox saying, yes, this is completed and it's good to go, we know that we've touched it, we've done the inspection, but it failed. And so we get a red X. And so now we can go in, and I'm not going to go through each one of these individually. I'm actually going to use our bulk edit mode for the rest of these. And again, some of this stuff, bulk edit mode doesn't have to be on. It's an option that you can give to your users. Sometimes people like to even default things to green to save clicking in the field because they think it takes too long to click individually. All of that is configurable by you. Oops, did I not do that right? Oh, I didn't click the bulk edit button. There, and so now that'll finish that. And so we've completed that. We're all done. I can complete the work order. I can say how many hours it took me to do this. I can put the date that I did it. I can add that is complete. And I'll log the work and complete it. And now this has gone back into my inspections program. And so if I go back in to my view here, and I go to my inspections programs, oops, I want just my ones for my Koopman Health. And I want to go look at, actually, I'm going to go into details of this quick. I want to look at all inspections that we've done on this. And so now I can see the entire history of doing these fire extinguisher inspections in this building. We can see all the times that we stopped. We can see all the ones that passed. We can see where our failures are at. And then we can see how many did we fail that we didn't create a work order for, and how many failed that we created a work order for, but we completed it. And so this is from a QA/QC standpoint, being able to know where these are, right, of failed without work orders. And we can start to see here as I scroll down, which ones failed, if they had a work order associated with them, what the status of that was. For the entire history of the building, we can go ahead and look at this month by month if we want to. If we're really curious and we say, hey, this failed, it completed, maybe Jayco's in taking a look and auditing, and they say, hey, what happened to that asset? We say, yep, it failed on this date. Here's the work order that completed it. And they say, well, what exactly failed when it failed on that date? We can actually go in and click on that specific asset. In this case, it's fire extinguisher 14. And we can actually go and look that it was actually the pressure gauge was outside of the operable range when we did this. And that was what was corrected via the work order. And here's the photo there of the attachment that shows what the issue was. And so it's all here in one spot, easy to find. Again, inspection programs, we have folks using them everywhere from healthcare compliance down to just daily checks of buildings to make sure things are in order, and they're going through their daily process of checking off items in the building that they need to take a look at every day. And so that's inspections. I'm going to go into a different demo project here. We're going to take a little bit of a turn in conversation, move away from kind of that platform view, that inspections view, the idea of using the floor plans from a use case. We're still going to build on top of platform with this next idea, but I want to talk a little bit about capital management. And if any of you want to have more in-depth conversations about your current capital management process, how you go through that, and maybe go off some of the things I'm going to show you today, contact your CSM. Happy to hop on a call with them as well to talk through this. But really, capital management is something that a lot of our clients struggle with. I just got back from a conference and had a whole bunch of other conversations about capital management struggles. And really, it comes down to good data. If we talk about FCA, and I'm going to intermingle the facility condition assessment conversation with CM a little bit as we walk through this, because they're very closely aligned in how we talk about this subject. And so start a little bit maybe with just a good baseline of data. And so you may have a baseline right now for a capital plan. Maybe you're doing a capital plan off of data and life cycle data for every asset in your building. You're probably not. Most people we find end up doing their capital management through a facility condition assessment with a partner. And so they'll hire a firm to come in and identify their assets. There's a couple different ways of performing FCA, right? You have your what's kind of viewed as the complex FCA, maybe in some cases the more expensive FCA, which is you have somebody come in and look at every single asset and give you the life cycle data and roll that all up. That's seen as, I'll say, the more expensive FCA, because the sheer act of capturing those data points and knowing what you're putting on data is hard for a lot of those architecture and engineering firms, because they're not built for that. If you think about what AkitaBox is, though, we've already built the platform. We know all of the assets in your facilities. They're QR coded, right? You can walk up and you can scan all of those assets. And so the next really logical step in that process is let's go ahead and take that asset one step further. Let's give that asset a condition, right? And so this condition here, you can update on the fly. Again, this is something that you can scan the QR code and go right to updating the condition in the field. This can be done by yourself or your FCA partners. And so your architects, engineers, contractors that you may partner with and do work in are very good third-party advocates for you to help you get the right conditions in and you giving them a platform by inviting them into AkitaBox to help you better gauge the condition of these will start to help us give you better capital planning tools and better cost management tools, and more importantly, better predictability of when those costs are going to come. And not only that, but everybody doesn't get the budget that they always want, or the budget that they need to maintain the buildings at the rate that they need to be maintained. And so everybody gets stuck making hard decisions. And so being able to show the long-term implications or the short-term implications of the current budget that you're dealt and the hard decisions that you have to make, and start to be able to have those conversations on a more meaningful basis of, well, that's fine. I have 2 million that I need to take care of. You're going to give me $1.5 million. We need to cut $500,000 of spending. Here's those line items, but here's the implication. On the flip side, we're also going to help you make those decisions better by giving you much better insight as to the organizational risk that that item failing presents to you. And so as I scroll down here on the left-hand side, you'll see, because I'm in my capital management project, I have this other thing down here. And so where you saw the room and asset relationship stuff before, this is now, because capital management is turned on, we also have this assembly life cycle. And so you can see here again that condition that was set up above. We can see the installation date of this asset. And more importantly, we can see the what happens if it fails, right? In this case, it's a loss of redundancy. So it's not as bad as, some other things. We have healthcare clients, right, who maintain generators that serve operating rooms. If that fails, somebody could die, right? I mean, that's a serious life and death issue directly associated with an asset. In that case, we're going to manage that asset differently than the air conditioner unit that's a window air conditioner unit that serves the administration wing, and we're 2 hours away from being to Home Depot and back and plugging in a new one. If that fails, it's far less severe than the operating room generator. And so being able to bring those insights into your organization, and even in the case of the healthcare, not all generators present the same risk. And so even knowing across your organization, I may own multiple of an asset, but in some cases that asset carries a higher risk with it than another asset based upon what it serves. And so we can see here a good life cycle graph. We can see when it was installed. We can see when the most recent inspections were. If you're a work order user of AkitaBox, you'll also see where work orders are being done on this. What's important with that is if you're using the fully integrated platform with work orders, PMs, and being able to do these assessments on the fly, you're going to get a lot of data points against these assets to start to show you the true health of that asset. And so maybe in a visual inspection, it always looks like it's in good condition, but we keep throwing belts or we keep going, through shims, right? Which is kind of a indicator of maybe a larger deal, and we're spending a lot of time maintaining it when it's a $1,200 pump. And so knowing all of those data points against this asset will help us make better decisions. You can start to see here that because we have a condition and a severity of failure associated, those two things combined will calculate our risk on the organization. And so because really we're just losing our backup, even though it's a poor condition boiler, it's still presenting a low risk because in essence, if it fails, we still have the ability to heat the building. And so our risk here is low, and that's how we're going to manage this asset within our facility portfolio. Down below this, then we have cost lines, because it's not just about knowing when it's going to fail or what it's, what condition it's in or what risk it poses to the organization. How much is it going to cost? And how often do I need to do that? And so we built an integration to RS Means, and so we can pull in RS Means costs associated with maintenance and repair. And we also pull in that industry standard life cycle for those assets. And so in this case, this boiler is expected to last 30 years based upon industry standard. But it's only going to get to 30 years if every 7 years we're doing a major repair descaling, cleaning to make sure that we get the best out of that, right? This is no different than, how long is my car going to drive for me? But in order for it to drive that long, I need to change the oil, because if I don't change the oil, my engine explodes. Same concept, right? And so we're building in both those kind of major repair costs on a regular basis. And also, when am I going to have to replace that and pay that larger cost on the back end? We have the ability then, as part of that assembly, now I'm not in the platform right now, I'm in our capital management application, but you can see that there's the interoperability, right? So I can see that this B1 is what's connected to this cost line and life cycle. We can see the photos that are associated with that. So these are the same photos that are associated with this asset. And if I add more photos to this asset over time by scanning the QR code and adding a new photo, those photos will continue to be associated here. So when you go in and this finally does have to be replaced, or you're looking to replace it in the future, you can have those conversations and you have all of this at your backup, so that if somebody asks, well, why does that need to be done? Or what is the condition of that? Your board member probably hasn't stepped foot in the boiler room in a long time. Some have, many don't. And so being able to walk in and have all of this photography and backup information to help plead your case for the dollars that you require to continue to maintain the building at a standard facility condition index number, this is really how we're helping you drive that conversation. And so this is just one example, right? I just grabbed one asset and took that one asset into capital management, but in reality, your portfolio is the consolidation and the roll up of all of those assets. And so here you can see I'm in my assembly view, really just a list of assets, right, or costs that I need to think of. And so it's not just always your things that have a one-to-one relationship with something on the floor plan. Sometimes it's things like my interior finishes that I still need to have some dollars associated with for planning. And so the ability to put things like my carpet, planning on when I'm going to do carpet installs or VCT installs, or replace other assets, can all be included in this as well. But as I scroll down here, you can start to see these other assets. These are all very similar. So if I go and click on one of these, again, the same thing. We get that risk associated with its condition and what's going to happen if it fails. In this case, this is actually, we're way past its deferred maintenance. We can see that it's been deferred down here in how many years. However, we can see that, in fact, it's still in fair condition and presents a low risk. And so this is where AkitaBox can start to help you make those decisions of, we can continue to defer this with confidence, as opposed to just saying, yep, it's way past its useful life, we should replace it next year. I mean, if we've been in facilities a long time, we all have those, relationships with assets that go way longer than they should, right? One of the buildings where we had one of our first AkitaBox offices is still run on a 1902 electrical main switch. We'll keep rolling with punches today. All right. So not sure exactly where you lost me. Maybe I'll back up a second here. The thing with being able to track all of this and look at this from a risk perspective ultimately comes back to reporting. And so it's great, we roll all this stuff up, but we really want to look at this on a holistic picture, which is, again, where AkitaBox really shines, right? We have all of your data points, they're QR coded, being able to assign cost to that. And when we start to talk about how this rolls up, we can see the conditions, the severity of failures, the risks, and where my risks might lie high based upon those. And then we can start to compare all this. Because one-to-one assets are great. It gives us some insight, but how does that help us manage our organization and our real estate portfolio that we own, right? Being able to even look at this in terms of mission criticality. We have some other owners who don't look at it in terms of mission criticality because, they're public entities or they're schools, and you can't really say that one school is more important than another. And so some use utilization as their measure as opposed to mission criticality. So how utilized is that square footage over how important is it to my overall organizational goals? This example here was structured to mission criticality. And so you can see that essentially they ranked within their organization what was most important. They said their community center was the most important. And when we laid it all out, the problem is that they stated their community center was most important, but in fact, it was carrying the worst condition and the highest FCI number. And for those of you that maybe don't know what an FCI number is, facility condition index, it's really all of the stuff that needs to be done. So your backlog, your deferred maintenance, and then divided by, right, the theoretical cost to replace that square footage. So if I tore the building down and built it brand new, how much would it cost me to build that same square footage out? And so essentially we're halfway to the replacement cost in our deferred maintenance in this building, which is moving towards the bad side. However, it's our most important building. So what's our recommendation? You move towards replacing that building with something nicer and newer because it is your most important building, or you start to reinvest in that building at a much higher rate than others that aren't as important to your mission. And so we can start to see as we scroll down here, we get some other charts and graphs. This is constantly in motion too. A lot of these were from insights from clients telling us what they wanted to see with the CM tool. So we're constantly adding and evolving what this reporting structure looks like. You can see here that we have things like years deferred. And so, this is more of a leading indicator so that you can go and investigate things. If we're replacing everything right on cue, right? It's going to last 30 years and we're replacing it. That's good. We tend to see a lot more of this, which is replacing things after their life cycle. That can be good and bad. It can be good because you're maintaining your facility so well that you're getting extra life out of your assets. It can be bad if you're not getting the budget you need, therefore you have to let those assets live that long, and maybe they're posing a risk to your business or your organization. And then on the flip side, what happens if we're replacing things too early, right? Is that an indicator of if we start to see a lot of things pop up over here on the left-hand side of the chart, could be a leading indicator that maybe I have an environment that isn't great on my equipment right now. Maybe I have a mechanical room that's below water level and is constantly taking on water, therefore it's humid, and things tend to wear a lot faster and rust out in those humid conditions, right? And so different things might lead you to that, but seeing them on a chart and being able to use that chart as a driver for investigation can really help to dig into some of those things and understand where some of those issues are. Ultimately, the rubber meets the road, though. This is what everybody wants to get to. What's my spending plan? This spending plan that's here on the chart is less than ideal, right? I mean, it's huge fluctuations year over year. And so being able to use this tool, this is great as a first pass, but I also have a whole bunch of backlog over here that I can't get to. And so I always stress it's great to identify backlog, but once we've identified it, we should really be using the tool to go and plan backlog. So let's take this number here, and over the next 5 years, let's actually level out these years by applying our backlog so we can buy it off. Maybe we don't have the money to buy it all off over 5 years. Maybe we have to come up with a 10-year plan. But having the ability to say, well, yeah, but over 10 years, our total is X. Yeah, but I only have Y to spend every year. Okay, well, how many years can we manage to do that? Using this to actually manage that is where, again, a lot of the value comes for our clients. And so going through our backlog and saying, yeah, you know what, this one's low value. Let's take a look at this, right? And so we can start to look at this low value asset. We can see that we've actually deferred this. It was supposed to be done in 2010, but it's still low. It's my foundation actually, which I'm probably never gonna change. And so we can come back until it actually fails on me. I'm going to defer that for another 25 years, unless I have to come back and do some minor repairs that somebody actually highlights as major repairs. On the flip side, I may look at something like painting my hydraulic wall or painting my masonry, again, as a low risk, but I do want to do that because I know that I've had some issues down there. but not, I don't want to push this way off into the future, but we're going to push this off 5 years. Being able to manage these costs so that they get redistributed across the baseline up top is important, so we can start to buy down our backlog, plan it out into the future. The goal is to get to zero backlog and balance these years out. Now, where I also like to dig into this stuff too is if I go down here to some of my graphs, we start to show total renewal costs. So what's our lifetime value of owning that building, right? How much money am I going to spend, and which building's lifetime value increases faster than others? Because if I'm managing my portfolio, like this building here that's just growing exponentially, is that because it's bigger than the rest? Or is that because of something innate with the building? Is it really old and it's historical, therefore it's growing faster because it's much more expensive per square foot to maintain a historical landmark versus a modern building, right? These are things that you can take into account here. Nobody ever gets the budget they need, so where is my gap in budget, and how much is that growing year over year, and do we need to address it, or are we okay maintaining that gap? Looking at FCI over time, this is always one that I like to show here because my blue line here is a brand new building. All my other lines are aging. They've been aging for years, and I've been managing and maintaining that. And so my budgets are set to maintain this. But because this blue line is a new building, I'm still in that honeymoon phase, right? I'm in that phase of everything's brand new. I just have to go through and change belts and filters. And as long as I do that, I'm fine. But that's a low cost of maintenance. Right about here, we hit that, 15, 20-year mark of the building or the age of the building, and things start to fail, and they start to fail all at once. And so being able to see, right, again, here's that 30-year mark. This is that 15-year mark. Here's that other big cliff, right? This is where those 30-year assets start to go. And so you can start to see here that, hey, there's a cliff coming, and being able to foresee that cliff and how big that cliff is so that you can adjust budgets prior to, so that this doesn't become a building that now has a lot of deferred maintenance and backlog because we didn't plan far enough ahead for the increasing budget that was going to be demanded. This is important to know and know how to manage. And so ultimately, all of this data really comes right from, I'll go back to that first boiler that we looked at. It's a culmination or, aggregation of those individual assets, which if you're an AkitaBox customer have been mapped as part of your standard implementation. This is just one step further of let's go and add some conditions, some risk, and some cost, and give you a useful way to manage it and to back up your budget requests and tell a better story, right? How do you tell what the impact of that deferred maintenance is? How do you talk about what your next 5 years budget is and what we need to do and where our high risk items are, right? Being able to even run customer reports. So if I go over to the assemblies, I can come in here and say, you know what, just show me my extreme and high risk. And I want to export my cost lines so that I can provide that off to my CFO or COO, whoever wants that information on the fly. I can also come in here and grab things with different installation dates or projected replacement dates if I want to start modifying it that way. And so the ability to run these customized kind of queries and reports to pull out information that's more specific with maybe the task at hand is equally important when we start to look at this information. The one other thing that I want to hit on before we leave capital management and do some Q&A before Zoom decides to fail on us again today. I wanted to talk about this in terms of the capital management and the relationship of it to a facility condition assessment, and the fact that if you are, maybe you had a facility condition assessment done recently, that's something that, talk to your CSM. We deal with a lot of these. So we have clients coming in saying, you know what, I just had an FCA done and I spent a lot of money getting that FCA done, and I want that value to be useful longer. we can operationalize that current FCA data you have and bring it into the system to start to give you that intelligence day one. Or maybe you're saying, you know what, I had an FCA done, but that was 5 or 7 years ago. We were really thinking about getting a new FCA done. Again, this is an opportunity to engage your partners and give them a tool, right? Just so you know as well, we have an offline application so that, you know, your partners can go on site and collect any information. Or, you know, maybe you have internal staff who, you know, I have clients who have some good HVAC techs and, you know, other techs, plumbing techs on the staff who would be very good at giving condition and no cost and do it internally as well. And so, you know, if you're in that boat where you're, you know, you have AkitaBox and you either just had an FCA done somewhat recently where you think the data is still valuable, or you're looking to have an FCA done in the future, you know, I really want to make sure that I challenge you and hopefully showed you enough today that, you know, using AkitaBox and having your partners work in the system that you're going to be using long term can help bring further value and make that data, you know, live on, right? I just got back from a conference and, you know, had a lot of conversations about, you know, how FCAs typically are these giant boat anchors that get dropped off in the form of paper documentation that are good initially, but quickly start to lose value as projects are completed or other stuff starts to age out. And there's really a, you know, a real want in the industry right now to figure out how to make that data not only operationalized for that immediate need, but allow that data to live and be updated, right? So as you complete things that were in that FCA, now what's next? And let's show those things being completed and show where our budget's at and show how we're moving through that plan. But you have to remember that plan is aging, and so are the next components in your building that will need to be part of your new plan. And so making sure that you're getting all of that insight on an updated basis and truly giving you a live view into your data. And, you know, for the lack, you know, our new software is called FCA Pulse for a reason, right? You want that constant pulse on your building. You want your finger on the pulse. You want to make sure that when your people are touching something in the field and giving you feedback that, hey, this is the 9th time I've been up here this month, you know, replacing a belt that keeps getting thrown off this AHU, that's going to be a feeder as we start to make new decisions as, you know what, we're spending way too much time on maintenance. It's time to replace this because our ROI is proven based upon what we're currently spending per month. And so those are the types of things that are there, but being able to bring your partners into your tool to give you better insights will ultimately bring you more value in the long run. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica and see if we've gotten any questions so far.
Awesome, thank you. We don't have anything currently, so just a reminder, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen where you can submit questions. So we will answer those if anything comes through. And thanks again, everyone, for sticking with us through our Zoom issues today.
Absolutely.
We'll leave it open for, oh, let's see. So there is a question here. We recently had an FCA done. Is there an additional cost to have AkitaBox set up what Josh taught us today?
So talk to your CSM. I'm not sure what you already own. If you don't have the capital management application as part of the software, yes, there would be an additional cost. However, part of the implementation of that CM software would include us helping you take that FCA and operationalize it inside the software. If you're already a CM client, we should have a conversation about what format that's in and how we could utilize that to bring that in. And we can have that conversation with your CSM if you want to set that up.
Awesome, thank you. Nothing else quite yet. We'll leave it open for another minute or so.
Awesome, Luke. We're ready to get started with you too.
And again, there is another question about cost. So any questions about that should be directed to your CSM. They'll be able to gather details and give you a quote for that.
Yeah, it'll depend on what current things you're already using with an AkitaBox. We have some package pricing if you use multiple modules. So yeah, have that conversation with the CSM and happy to get back to you with a quote quickly. Joe, there is a mobile app for the data collection and being able to put in the FCA. We're working on a mobile app for inspections currently, and should have that out as well. But there is a mobile app for much of this, yes. And the ability to go offline and online with it.
All right, well, it looks like that is all the questions. Anything else, Josh, before we wrap up?
No, really appreciate everybody's time. And if you have more questions, follow up with your CSM. And, you know, if they need me to come into the conversation and dig into it, happy to be a part of that as well. Thanks, everybody.
And for all attendees, we will be following up with an email in the next few business days that has a link to the recording. We'll try to stitch it together so that it's just one file with our little Zoom hiccup today, so that you guys don't need to try to navigate that technology issue. So look forward to a follow-up email. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to your CSM.
Thanks for joining.
Bye, everyone.